What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Wenzel, and today we are talking about 8 must-start players in Week 11 of the fantasy football season. Before we dive into that, though, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, make sure you do that now and make sure you turn on that notification bell as well. That way you'll be alerted when all of our new content comes out. Everything from videos like this, podcast episodes, daily shorts, so much content you don't want to miss out on. Make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell. If you also have a start-sit question for Week 11, you can leave that down in the comment section below. But my number one rule, if you're new here, is that if you leave a question in the comment section, make sure you respond to someone else's. We want to be a community that helps each other win their leagues this year. So if you leave a start-sit question, help somebody else out by answering theirs as well. Without further ado, let's dive on into our 8 must-start players for Week 11. 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends. We always start at the quarterbacks, and our first quarterback start of the week is Brock Purdy against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home this week. Purdy now makes this list in back-to-back weeks. He was a great start last week, as I said he would be. He got his full plethora of weapons back, his supporting cast back, in Week 10. Puts up nearly 24 fantasy points. It's good for the quarterback 6 last week on their way to absolutely routing the Jaguars. And now he gets the Bucs at home in Week 11. And we're not only a good matchup for quarterbacks, but dare I say that Brock Purdy is a home game merchant? I mean, I don't think that's actually entirely true. But look, in home games this year, he's played significantly better. He has a 74.3 completion percentage at home games versus 64.2 on the road. That is a 10% difference. 74 completion percentage at home games, 124.9 passer rating. That is astronomical. And his fantasy point totals at home this year are going to shock you. In Week 3 against the Giants at home, 20.3. Week 4 against the Cardinals, 21.3. Week 5 against Dallas, 26. And Week 8 against Cincinnati, 20.3. He has put up 20 plus in every single home game this year. And so then you boil in the fact that the Bucs are giving up the 5th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this year. They give up the 3rd most over the last 4 weeks. I mean, that makes Brock Purdy an absolute must-start this week. He's a top 10 play for me in our consensus rankings. He's a consensus top 12 for all 3 of us fellas. I love Brock Purdy this week. I think he should be locked into your lineups. No questions asked. I love the matchup at home. It's time for him to shine again. Let's move on to our second quarterback start of the week now. CJ Stroud takes on the Arizona Cardinals at home. And Stroud is yet another player who performs better in home games this year. Now, to be fair, I think that's true of most NFL quarterbacks. I think almost every NFL player prefers to play at home versus on the road. But some of these numbers here are just notable. Stroud's only played 4 games at home this year versus 5 on the road. Yet in home games, he's thrown for 1,359 yards compared to 1,267 on the road. That's nearly a 100-yard difference in one game less. 11 of his 15 passing touchdowns this year have come in home games. And the passer rating, my goodness, his passer rate, 113.9 in home games and 89.9 on the road. So this is a game where I think we could easily get a 3-touchdown game from CJ Stroud because it's also a great matchup against the Cardinals. 6th most fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks this year. The 6th most passing touchdowns allowed with 15 on the season. The Arizona Cardinals defense has. I think this game also has sneaky shootout potential to it. You get Kyler Murray back as well for the Cardinals. He can go toe-to-toe with CJ Stroud. Again, consensus top 10 quarterback for us across the board this week. Fire CJ Stroud up this week. I love the matchup with the Cardinals. He is a second must-start at the quarterback position. Let's move on to the running backs now. Raheem Mostert takes on the Las Vegas Raiders at home this week, and I went back and forth on this one, whether it should be Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, Raheem Mostert, which one should it be? And I ultimately landed on Raheem Mostert, and it's not that I wouldn't play Achane this week, because, again, the possibility is there that he goes absolutely bonkers in a great matchup, but there's also a world where they don't just thrust him back into action. I think the safer play here is Raheem Mostert, and I think he's going to be a darn good play at that. Vegas has given up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs this year. They've given up the 3rd most rushing yards, 4.5 yards per carry. The Dolphins are just going to eat that up. If they all average 5 yards a carry this week, I wouldn't be surprised, right? This defense is exploited by the run. And Mostert this year only has 2 games where he didn't finish as a top 24 running back on the week. In PPR formats, as I should boil that in there. And he's actually scored a touchdown in all but 2 games this year as well. So there's going to be opportunity for Raheem Mostert to get his fair share in this game, to absolutely eat. There should still be plenty of opportunities for HN too. So I'm firing up Raheem Mostert with confidence this week. He's an extremely solid play. I think he has plenty of upside this week as well, especially if HN has eased back into action. Yeah, Raheem Mostert is a lineup lock for me this week. He's a running back 2 at worst. Second running back must start of the week now, James Conner. We're going to revisit this Cardinals-Texans matchup. He's on the road traveling to play the Houston Texans this week. And Conner returned from IR last week. Immediately, 16 carries. Great sign. Clearly, he is still the primary in this offense. No questions asked. What was discouraging, though, is that he didn't get any receiving work, which, again, unfortunate, but I don't anticipate that being the norm rest of season. And the Texans, they've been middle of the pack against running backs this year. Like, I'm not excited to say, smash matchup for James Conner, but even in their last 4 games, though, 3 running backs. Joe Mixon, 12.5 fantasy points. Rashad White, 27.5 fantasy points. Alvin Kamara, 17.4. Now, those are all guys who can get it done in the pass-catching game as well, so you hope that James Conner is going to catch a few additional passes this week. But as I mentioned with CJ Stroud, right, this could be a high-scoring game, and Conner should have opportunity to find the end zone. I think there's opportunity for him to contribute in the passing game as well. I'm firing him up as a solid running back 2 play this week, and I think there's upside there for him as well to get plenty of the groundwork, score a touchdown, and if he adds a few receptions in there, you might be looking at him as a fringe top 12 option at the end of the week. I'm firing him up as a solid running back 2 this week, though. Let's move on to the wide receivers now. First wide receiver start of the week, Puka Nacua, baby. Puka Nacua takes on the Seattle Seahawks at home, and Stafford should be back for this game. He's been a full participant. Oh, my blunders are hilarious sometimes. He's been a full participant in a practice this week. So I think it's wheels up for the likes of Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, etc. Seattle, they've actually been buttoned up really good against wide receivers as of late, actually. But they can still be exposed. And they've been exposed all year recently. Seattle, they run zone coverage at the 3rd highest rate in the league. And Puka Nacua, he's actually scored the 7th most fantasy points against zone coverage this year, according to our friends over at PFF. Jamie Eisenberg over at CBS. I said friends over at PFF. We have no connection to them, but per PFF, I just like saying our friends. They provide useful statistics for us. But anyways, Jamie Eisenberg over at CBS, he pointed out as well that 12 wide receivers have scored at least 12 fantasy points against Seattle this year. And, well, obviously one of those players was Puka Nacua back in week 1 where he went absolutely bonkers. So I'm not really scared off by the recent success of the Seattle secondary. I think Puka should be locked into your lineups this week after the bye. I think the Seahawks team bounces back, and I think Puka Nacua is going to be a part of that as well. You can fire him up into your lineups as a wide receiver 2 option this week. Second wide receiver start of the week now. Terry McLaurin at home against the New York Giants. Terrence, put it in reverse, Terry. This is a great matchup. I hear a lot of people saying this is going to be the Brian Robinson show this week, right? Like the Commanders are going to get up early on the Giants, and Brian Robinson is going to get plenty of work in this game. But I feel like every argument that you make for Brian Robinson in a favorable matchup here, you can also make for Terry McLaurin. Like if the team is going to get up early, I think the passing attack is going to have to be a part of that, and Terry McLaurin, I think, could easily benefit from that. Because yes, as I mentioned, the Giants are bad against the run, but they're even worse against the pass this year. The 3rd most fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers this year. The 6th most receiving yards per game. 13.5 yards of reception to wide receivers. That is the 7th most. They were allowing 18 fantasy points per game to outside wide receivers this year. That is the 8th most, which is where Terry McLaurin lines up. Terry McLaurin also first in routes run this year, 397 of them. Has hardly taken any from the slot. So can both Terry McLaurin and Brian Robinson be relevant this week? I think the answer is yes, sure. They can be, but I think to just discount this passing attack when Sam Howell has been throwing 40 times a game, I think that's just silly. I don't think we can discount that, especially when Terry McLaurin has scored at least 13 fantasy points in each of the last 5 games against the Giants. I'm banking on Scary Terry this week. Again, solid wide receiver 2 option that could, if he finds the end zone, have himself a very, very nice week. So I'm inserting Terry into my lineups, no questions asked, against the New York Giants this week. Let's wrap it up now with the tight end position. First tight end start of the week, Trey McBride. Once again, revisiting this Cardinals-Texans matchup. This is probably the last week where I'll be able to reasonably call Trey McBride to start of the week, so I'm just going to go ahead and take full advantage of it. Look, obviously coming off the massive performance of Week 10, caught 8 of 9 targets for 131 yards, good for 21.1 fantasy points, and a tight end 2 finish on the week in PPR formats, and now he just gets a juicy matchup against the Texans. My goodness. Houston, they're giving up the most fantasy points per game, targets, and receptions to the tight end position this year. That's great for PPR formats. I mentioned it with Stroud and Connor already. This is a game that has high scoring potential, and McBride should, that's what I was trying to say, get more than enough usage in this game to catapult him into a top 7 option again this week. He's locked in, and in my eyes, the definition of a must start at the tight end position this week. This is a smash spot for him. Fire up Trey McBride if he's not in your lineups already. Second tight end start of the week will bring us home here now with Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets. Visits the Buffalo Bills this week, and Tyler Conklin, he's been sneaky hot recently. 6 receptions, 66 yards in Week 9, 7 for 70 yards in Week 10, 13 for 136 if you want to do your math there. He's been getting more involved, and despite the season-long stats, Buffalo they've actually been a solid match for tight ends over the last 4 weeks. During that stretch, 8th most fantasy points per game given up to tight ends, the 8th most receiving yards, 3 touchdowns in 4 games as well. That's actually the second most. So I actually think there's a very real chance Conklin finishes as a low-end starting tight end 1 in fantasy football this week. And if I'm in a pinch, I actually like Tyler Conklin as my number 1 streaming option. If he's going to see 5, 6, 7, we see that increase to 8 targets this week. I mean, this is a great spot for Tyler Conklin in a game where the Buffalo Bills are going to come out firing after losing to the Broncos last week. If they don't come out firing this week, something wrong with that Buffalo team. And the Jets are going to have to stay in this game with the pass. Tyler Conklin has been getting more involved. I like him in a pinch this week. I think you can fire him up as a low-end tight end 1 this week. That is all I have for you today, though. Thanks for tuning in to this video on the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast YouTube channel. Podcast comes out Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can make sure you subscribe to catch that and turn on those notifications so you don't miss those episodes as well. We'll have waiver wire video coming from Tyler as well. Typically, Cameron has done a trade buy low, sell high video, but we're at the trade deadline now in our leagues, so we're going to make an adjustment in that video. But next week for Thanksgiving, you will for sure get a video just like this, but for the waiver wire ads on Monday, you'll get a podcast on Tuesday. You get a starts of the week video just like this on Wednesday. Cameron will be taking that one. We'll have shorts all throughout the week. We're going to take off Thursday and Friday. We'll all be traveling for the holiday. But make sure you're subscribed and turn on that notification bell so you know what's happening on the channel, what new content is dropping daily, sometimes even 2 to 3 times a day between shorts as well. Make sure you're in the loop on all the content we are releasing for you all. And if you do have a start sit question, as I mentioned at the top, feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. But my number 1 rule, as I said, if you're going to leave a comment, if you're going to leave a question, help somebody out as well. Answer their question down in the comment section. We want to be a community that helps each other win their leagues this year. Thanks for tuning into this video on the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel. Nailed it that time. Stay safe. Stay healthy. I won't see you before the holiday. So for me personally, enjoy your Thanksgiving if you choose to celebrate Thanksgiving. We will see you all soon. Until then, deuces.